The summer of 1979, I bicycled from Oregon to Virginia with Gary Hoshak. He was my buddy from high school, and when you go through a trip like that, you either end up loving each other or hating each other, and we ended up on the love side. And I mean, we had all sorts of adventures. I hit a cow in eastern Oregon with my bicycle, and we had a skunk walk up in the middle of the night. We were just sitting at this picnic table having a beer when all of a sudden I said, "Don't move!" And there was the skunk, and we said, "Look out!" And it just kind of smelled us. I think it thought we were other skunks, because when you're riding a bicycle across the country, you don't really get a shower very often, as in maybe once a week, if that. And you get done with this whole trip, and you just end up on this good side. And I thought, wow, this was cool. And it was before they had cell phones, so we would send postcards. And Gary's mom would go ahead and tell my mom that she got a postcard, or my mom would call her up and say the boys are still alive. And the next year, Christmas Eve rolls around, and my parents' church, they had an announcement that said that midnight mass would be at 8 p.m. And I said, you can't have midnight mass at 8 p.m. The time implies when the mass has to be. And I said, I am driving over to my friend's church. It's 11 miles away. It's in Northwest Ohio. You got to go through the cornfields. I get over to this church, and the church is packed at midnight on Christmas Eve. And I look, and who is sitting in front of me? Gary. And I'm over here pulling his hair. And he doesn't know I'm pulling his hair. And he's like, what? And then he turns around, and at the end of the mass, he says, "Tony, come over to Dad's." And I said, "What are you talking about?" "Mom died this last summer. She had cancer, you know, and I don't want Dad to be alone. So everybody, all my brothers and sisters are coming over to the house. And they're all going to hang out, and we're going to have tequila and ham sandwiches." And I said, "Sounds good to me." So I show up at their house at 1:15, and I'm hanging out with them, and I am just having the best time. And Gary's 4 brothers look at me and say, "Tony, you didn't bring any beer. You didn't bring any potato salad. You didn't even bring any mustard." I said, "I was going to church. I didn't know that I was coming to a party afterwards." And that started in 1980. So every year since then, I either show up on their doorstep on Christmas Eve, and I give them stuff. And it's like, have you ever seen green Christmas pickles from Germany? They're ornaments. I found them at the Christmas tree shop, and I got 30 of them, and I sent them to the whole family and their friends there. And then these guys are so crazy, and they love baseball so much, I found replica baseball cards. And some guy had blue eyes that just were like on fire, and they were all having a couple beers too many and arguing about who was going to get that baseball card. And then if I couldn't show up, I showed up at a liquor store, and I asked the guy, "I'd like to get 30 nips. And he said, "Sir, you can buy about 12 bottles of booze for what you're paying for all of these. You're only getting a tenth of it." And I said, "I know, it's a joke for my friends. In Ohio, you couldn't get nips." And I thought, oh, I'll get them back to Ohio and surprise these guys. And everything's going good until their father dies. And I ended up going back to Ohio, and Verge had died, and all the boys are over at Kevin's house, and Gary was over there, and all these guys, they look so sad, and their father had just died. And I said, "Wait, guys, wait a minute. Everybody's over here. I think it's time I told you. I want you to vote me into the Hoshak family. I have yearned to be a Hoshak more than anything else in my life." And they looked at me and said, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, you got the whole family here. You know, Carol's here too, and so's Lynn. You guys are all here." And they said, "Tony, I don't think you're up to being a Hoshak." And I said, but guys, you gotta help me." And they said, no, we'll think about it. And so the next Christmas Eve rolls around, I tell them, "You got a board meeting here. Guys, you gonna vote me in?" And they said, "Oh, I don't know, you know." And then it starts up with the fun stuff where Carol says, "Tony, I was really pushing for you to be in the family. But Mike was the one who said, we can't let a jerk like that have our name." And I said, "Mike said that?" And then Gary would say, "Tony, you know I love you, but when we were on that bicycle trip, I heard something in the tent, and it was rattling and rolling around, and you sat up and you couldn't hear it. And then you sat back down, and I could hear this little tiny faint rattling, and I thought it was Gary that was grinding his teeth. So I leaned over him to hear if he was grinding his teeth, and he opened his eyes and said, "Don't you kiss me!" And I said, "I'm not trying to kiss you. I'm just, listen to this." And he heard it, and it was that potato chip bag that was rubbing up against the tent wall. And it's the oddest little thing. So we had all those things, and those guys, I kept saying, "Vote me in, vote me in." And they said, "Oh, Tony, we can't vote you in." And then my 50th birthday party, I roll back to Ohio, and all of the Hoshok boys come over to my sister's house, and they're all over there, and they're saying nice things about me, and I'm asking them to vote me in, and they said, "Oh, no, Tony, we're not ready to vote you in yet." But Gary said, "Dad carried this pocket knife with him for the last 40 years. We want you to have it." And I put the pocket knife in my pocket, and it was one of those rare times where I was speechless. And I thought to myself, what a beautiful bunch of guys. So I'm trying to decide. I'm thinking for this Christmas coming up, I'm going to make fake ballots and have them all mark my name in and send them to them and see if that doesn't get me into the family.